We have composer John McCabe here with us today, and he's written a major work for the Verdehr Trio, Fauvel's Rondeau. At this moment, it's March the 5th. We are at the Cosmos Club, which is just across the street from the Phillips Collection, where we're the group in residence, and we will give the Washington premiere of Fauvel's Rondeau. Mr. McCabe is here with me, and first we're going to speak a little bit about this work. And but before that, I want to say, John, I haven't seen you in something like 20 years, but I think you came to Michigan State in the early 70s, didn't you? And you played, I believe you were making an American tour with the Haydn sonatas, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I think I was, yes.
You?
Yeah, I was starting to get into the Haydn sonatas around about that time in a big way, yes.
Yes. And didn't you record all of them?
Yes, yes, I did.
40 works or something?
Oh, it's rather
more?
50, yes.
50?
Because I did the sonatas, of which there are, we've actually got about 52 or so, maybe a bit more. Right. But also I did the variations and the Fantasia and so on. So a lot of works.
Well, at that time I wasn't aware that you were a composer. We just met socially, I think. And then subsequently I heard some of your works and I liked them very much. And then we started the Verdehr Trio, I think, after you came. And of course we wanted to ask you to write a work for us. Really,
I suppose, two things about it. The first is that Fauvel was a medieval character in the book of Fauvel, the Roman de Fauvel. That was a satirical, quite often quite crude satirical work. And Fauvel himself was a donkey, an ass, who is the lord of misrule. He becomes lord of the world, and it's a political satire, really, but quite often very crude. Now, the reason that this piece is called Fauvel's Rondeau is because there is a kind of sense of it being an overall rondo form, in that the opening idea of it comes back several times as a ritornello and sort of binds the piece together. It has, however, another significance, which is that it's connected to a ballet I wrote in 1995, a full-length ballet for the Stuttgart Ballet, called Edward II, which is based on the play by Christopher Marlowe. And in fact, the ballet's been very successful. I mean, as we speak, it's being done at the Hong Kong Festival, and it's later this year we hope it's going to come to America with the Birmingham Royal Ballet Company, who do a wonderful performance. So it's, it's getting around, it's been recorded. And one of the elements in the ballet is that the choreographer, David Bentley, uses a troupe of wandering minstrels and, comedians and jugglers, and they sing songs. And they come in and out of the action, rather sort of commenting on what's happening. As part of the ballet. Yes. Oh. So they're an extra element. They're not in the Christopher Marlowe play at all. And when you asked me to write the piece, I thought what I'd really like to do is to explore the little tune. Well, it's not a tune. It's a rather complicated, crazy music, as I call it, which is associated with them when they come on stage. That's the first thing you hear. Yes, that's right, and the clarinet going up and down. So, and that is always their signature tune, so to speak. And I wanted to write a piece which would explore the ideas in that, almost in variation technique, but not as sort of a theme and variations, but with the various episodes of the Rondeau being different treatments, proper episodes, but different treatments of one idea or the other from that crazy music.
I see.
So that's why it's Fauvel, and that's why it's Rondeau.
Yes, I see.
And I chose the French because the Roman de Fauvel was a French satire. I mean, most of the stuff in this, most of the episodes, whether fast or slow, are completely new. They're only old in the sense that they are derived from the Fauvel thing in a very free way.
Yes.
Towards the end, there is a sort of processional section, which is again the Fauvel troupe, but it's a dance of folly or a dance of death.
My own imagination, you know, since with that subject matter, Edward II, that I sort of imagine the procession of penitentes, flagellum.
Well, it is. I think there is a bit of that.
Yeah,
there is a bit of that in the
open
staging
fifths.
Of it. Yes.
Is there really?
Yeah, I think there is.
Yeah.
It's the original idea, which the choreographer changed a bit, but the original idea was something like the end of The Seventh Seal, the Bergman film.
Yes.
With the people going on the skyline.
Yes,
with
in
death.
the skyline with death leading them, yeah.
And it goes into a very complex section, which is, I think, probably very difficult to play, and I do apologise for that.
No, with the ending section, you mean the
final section?
The final section, yes, I know. And I'm under strict instructions to ask you about the meaning of it and so forth.
Well, that is the final pas de deux for Isabella, who is Edward's wife, widow by this time,
yes,
and her lover Mortimer.
Yes, that's what I thought. Yeah. Yes.
And what happens through the ballet is they have three pas de deux. The first is when she is still trying to get on affectionate terms with her husband, Edward, who is gay.
Yes,
and I mean, the whole tragedy arises from various aspects of that. And they have three pas de deux, these two characters. First, he is trying to seduce her and get her to sign a petition against the king. She does sign. She's not seduced, but she does sign. Because she's still been trying to get back together with her husband and make a go of things. The second pas de deux is the beginning of Act, or near the beginning of Act 2, which is when she is in France. And she is now having an affair with Mortimer, and she has turned against Edward. That's quite a vicious number. And the third pas de deux, which is the one which closes this piece, is a very tortured piece. And by now they're both completely corrupted by their lust for power. But this is that final pas de deux. So there is a direct connection with two of the characters. I ought to say, incidentally, that although Isabella becomes a monster, I find her a very moving character because she is perfectly understandable. The reasons for her doing what she did are understandable, and Edward is understandable. And I feel a real sense of compassion for both those characters.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so the ending, I thought I sort of envisioned just your idea of just kind of they disappear through a history, you know. So
well, it is that sort of thing. Yes, the whole thing just
fading out,
just gradually dissipates.
Yes.
Well, it's two people who are really quite vicious.
Yes. So it's not
lust for power, and so it's really nasty.
Yes, right. Yeah, and one thing in the for the camera in the beginning of the middle of the second beat, you put a dot on my F sharp, and I sort of ripped that off. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Elsa thought perhaps it should just disappear into her attack, but I sort of felt
it's a definite punch.
A punch.
It's not an accent. If I wanted an accent, that's
yes,
a different thing.
Right. But it's a kind of
that's right.
So okay, great. And then this is intriguing too. The first section.
The first section, well, that of course is completely new again.
Murmuring section, yes.
But there are some relationships with the idea.
Yes.
But I thought of this particularly as a dance.
As a dance. Yeah, it feels like.
Yes.
I mean.
They're like character studies.
Yes.
In a sense.
Yes. That's interesting.
Even the slow ones.
Yes.
But they're not specific characters.
Yes. And
the thing you said just now about dance and rhythm and so on, you would think it was absolutely true. But I've discovered that I really have no idea what makes ballet music. That is to say, danceable.
Yes.
And I found this out by playing I mean, I've written, well, I'm now working on my third ballet with David Bindley. And it's great to work with him, so yes. But we've become great friends. So I play him tapes or let him hear, yes. lend him discs and so forth of music by other composers, which I think he'd, you know, I'd like to see him yes. use as a ballet.
Sure.
And it is quite extraordinary how things which I'm quite convinced would be very good ballet music find absolutely no response.
Really?
I mean, he likes the music.
From the choreographer?
Yes, as a choreographer. As a listener, he loves it.
Yes.
But he will say, I think it's a fabulous piece. I don't know what I'd do.
Really? Yeah.
And it can be something which is slow and not rhythmical, and you think, oh, well, okay, I can understand that, but it could be something quick and rhythmical,
yes.
and you're absolutely convinced to just, you know, go like that.
Well, I mean, isn't it traditional that the composer actually, or whoever has a kind of dramatic idea and then writes music to suit that idea, rather than the other way around? I mean, I'm just venturing.
Yes, well, it depends. It depends on the circumstances, really. I mean, it can come the other way around as well.
Yeah, I know that.
I don't know what makes ballet music danceable. I really don't.
Yeah.
And every composer I talk to who hasn't worked, and most composers haven't worked in ballet, because very few choreographers commission people to do full-length.
Did you write this as a commission, on that particular story?
Yes. He suggested it.
He suggested it.
He suggested the subject.
Yes.
He wouldn't. We met to discuss possible subjects because we both wanted to work with each other.
Yes.
And he said, there is one subject which I really am very keen on.
Yes.
I'm not going to tell you yet because I haven't finished the scenario. You know, at first draft.
Yes.
But as soon as he finished it, he sent it off to me.
Yes.
And I read it and I thought, this is absolutely marvellous.
Yes.
This is about real people, got a wonderful narrative sweep to it. And, you know.
Of course, it's one of the great stories.
One thing I should say generally about my music, that I do like accents to be real accents.
Yes. So
what I used to call American accents, because Americans used to make
strongly emphasized
accents. And it's a funny thing about, I find with American students very often that they're not doing the kind of accents that they used to do.
Ah, interesting.
It's softened.
Yes.
And I can't understand why.
Well,
I mean, what I'm looking for is what you might call a Stravinsky accent,
yes,
or a big band jazz.
I understand what you mean. Yes, like in here, at measure 254, the clarinet and the violin together in at interval of a ninth, or sometimes of a second, sometimes of a seventh. These dissonant intervals, do you have any, can you give us some?
That particular bit, I've forgotten about this, but that bit is again from yeah, well that is a sort of imitation medieval dance, and that does actually come in the ballet.
Yes.
And it's just a moment from it.
Yeah.
The instrumentation, the Fauvel troupe in the ballet has a special orchestra of its own, which is taken out from the full orchestra.
Yes.
But the score is for a huge orchestra.
Yes.
And the group is piccolo and clarinet, and they play that style.
I see.
And trumpet, trombone, percussion, and viola.
Yeah, I see.
Solo viola.
Yes.
And that is, it's just that it's grotesque. This violin, the violin interjections, yappa, papa, are actually drums.
I see.
In the original.
I see. No, it's a fascinating piece, and we've.
It's quite a wild piece.
It's quite a wild piece,
wild,
indeed,
yes.
and also your concept of that last pas de deux. I have to confess, it took us some time to get used to it and to make.
You should hear what the orchestra said about it.
Well,
they found it very hard.
It is very hard. It is very hard.
But that is the first bit of the ballet that I wrote.
Is that right?
Comes right near the end.
I meant to ask you about your observations about the state of where music is, and do you have any, ideas about where we might be heading? I mean, we still have many different styles coexisting these days.
Yes, we do. Well, that's one of the important things. I think anybody is a fool who actually says where music is headed, because the unexpected always happens.
Yeah, I guess,
and nobody 30 years ago would really have foreseen the growth of minimalism to the extent.
I was thinking of that, yes.
Or indeed the extent of that rather weedy animal called crossover.
Yes.
Which I think is a great mistake, because very few people can do it well.
Yeah.
And what I've been saying for 30 years is that I thought music would get to a point where it would synthesize the happenings of the last 100 years, all the different techniques and styles, which have always been very exclusive to themselves. They've had their disciples, the narrow dogma, and so on. And all that was really blown apart in the 1970s, 80s. And now we have a situation where students find it very confusing, because they can probably do anything they want to.
Yes.
And there isn't always, in some places there is still a narrow dogma which they have
there are holdouts where...
There are post-Schoenberg holdouts. But I do think there is a coming together of like serialism, minimalism, very conservative diatonic tonal music and so on. And all these things are really, they're there to be used as one wants to use them.
Yes.
There's another point too, which is that people theorize about music after the event.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've discovered, it's not a radically new discovery, I hasten to add, is that people tend to assume that the composer has actually constructed that chord out of these intervals because it relates to this thematic material. It might actually be that he liked that sound.
I see.
Yes. Yes. I mean, the chord in Rite of Spring, that
yes.
You can analyze that chord several different ways harmonically. And I'm not at all sure that any of them is correct.
Yeah.
In the sense that I don't think that was necessarily why he wrote that. So he wrote that sound because it was exactly the right sound.
I see, yes.
It's instinct,
Yes. In the end, it's the instinct that.
Well, I think the instinct is very important. The subconscious does a lot of the composing for you.
I'm sure.
And instinct is very important.
Yeah. No, that's.
But where music is headed, I haven't the faintest idea.
Yeah.
But I think there is this synthesis of different elements. I get very worried by the narrowness we've been talking about. I admire Boulez as a conductor very much. I enjoy some of his music, but not all of it. I get very angry with his programs, because he plays the same types of pieces. There's a modern pantheon of what are academically respectable pieces now. This is the new establishment. And those composers are respectable and anybody else is not considered. And I think that is wrong.
I've noticed that, yes.
And unfortunately, he's going around in circles now. Recycling exactly the same pieces all the time. And I think that I think there'll be another revolution. Well, it was the minimalism was partly a revolution against that. Stanford was a very good composer. But as a teacher, and he was a distinguished teacher, but he was very narrow. And if people wanted to fight against that, then they had to fight against it. Now, but he wouldn't accept. He wouldn't accept anything really. You know, and that particular style was the academically respectable style. Then, no, it's this cutting edge thing now is the academically respectable style. It's exactly the same as the neo-Brahms, in effect.
If people want to express themselves using tonality, I'm sure there's something they can still say with it. You know?
Well, there is.
If the right person...
if the right person, and if they've got a distinctive enough voice that you think, well, nobody else has done this, then that's all you need. Then it's new. And what people call new music is actually a minute fraction of genuine new in the sense of not having been written before.
That's right.
And that's all new music is. It shouldn't be used to define a style. And what we got to in the sort of 1960s, 50s, 60s, was the situation where you had pieces written in serial technique which were using the new international language and which could have been written anywhere. And I find that appalling.
Who were the important influences on you musically, and or teachers, if you care to mention?
Well, yes. I mean, one of the important influences was the fact that I was very badly burnt as a child. So I didn't go to school for a long time. I was ill most of the time. And my parents had a lot of records. My mother played the violin. She was German and Finnish, really, that family. Mostly German, some Finnish and some Swedish. My father was a scientist. He wasn't so interested in music in general. And it was very clear that I would become a musician. Now that was a very big influence. The availability of a wide variety of the standard repertoire of different kinds was actually a very big influence. The next influence on me was my piano teacher, a man called Gordon Green, who was in Liverpool, who I studied with for 17 years. It was very seldom you stay with the same teacher. And I learned a lot from him. He had a great interest in other music other than piano music. I mean, that's not always the case. You know, I learned a lot from him. One of his great friends was the composer Alan Rawsthorne, who I think is a wonderful composer. I've just written a book about him, in fact, which has just been published. And I got to know Alan when I was a child, and his music has always been a great influence because of the certain way he handles material, which uses a great deal of variation technique, even if it isn't a variation work. And I think my interest in that stems particularly from his influence. I was very much influenced by Messiaen when I was a student, and I came across, first of all, the organ works, and all sorts of other musics. I mean, I was very interested in Indian classical music around about the 1960s, before I hasten to add
before
the
it became
Beatles
popular.
took it up, and big band jazz I like, and jazz generally, although I can't play it. And as my playing career developed, that in itself has been an influence, because I try to make my music as practical as possible. I think partly because I've experienced the other myself. But I do believe in exploring a fairly wide range of repertoire. The amount of time I've got for doing so these days is much more limited because I'm writing these big ballets and they're really all-consuming.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for the great work.
Oh, well,
and so,
good. I look forward to the performance.
Thank you.